G'day, I'm Stephen Page from Page, Provan Family and Fertility Lawyers, and welcome to the Australian Family and Fertility Law Podcast. Today I'm talking about numbers. Others don't like to talk about numbers, but I do when it comes to surrogacy, because numbers can be enlightening. You have hard data that illustrates a trend. Recently I had the honour and privilege to speak at the Law Council Australia Family Law section Surrogacy and Donor Ethics Conference in Melbourne. And although we might be rivals, I'll just give a shout out to my colleague Sarah Jefford, who thought of the idea of this conference and then roped in Margaret Casey, KC. I know it sounds repetitive, but her surname is Casey and she's King's Counsel from New Zealand. Rebecca Kerner from ANZICA, the Australian and New Zealand Infertility Counsellors Association, and Jason Walker, Chair of the Family Law section. So anyway, I turn up, I speak as part of a panel that talks about the future, what I wish for the future, and then I heard a couple of disturbing numbers. The first is that from the Chair of the Assistant Commissioner, I should say, of the Australian Law Reform Commission, leading the surrogacy review, that in 2024, the year ended 30 June 2024, there were 761 children who acquired Australian citizenship by descent who'd been born overseas through surrogacy. And according to the ALRC discussion paper, in 2025, the number was 733. And you might look at that and go, so what? But the what is this, that in the 2024 year, there were 15 more children who applied, and in the 2025 year, there were about 40 more children who applied and seemingly did not get Australian citizenship. Now, it may be that that's because of they put an application one year, may have been determined another year, may not have been determined. More likely, I think, is that the application has been withdrawn or got rejected. And what I've seen in the past is that applications have been rejected, sometimes withdrawn, because the decision maker, an officer of the Department of Home Affairs, has not been satisfied to know who the surrogate was, therefore not been able to be satisfied as to the identity of the child, with the result that some of these children at least have been rendered stateless. So that worries me. The other number that jumped out at me was that in an average year, there's an article going on my website talking about the precise numbers, but in rough terms, about 40 kids a year born through surrogacy in New Zealand. Margaret Casey, KC, got these numbers, and they're enlightening. Why are they enlightening? Because you go, okay, well, that's the number in New Zealand, so what? New Zealand and Australia, broadly similar communities. And what do we see, however? That when you start doing the numbers in Australia, you then discover, when you add up all domestic surrogacy births and all international surrogacy births, the rate of surrogacy births to Australians is double that of New Zealand per capita. And you work out the different populations. And it might be because, well, there's very high Maori and Polynesian population in New Zealand, and traditional adoptions are popular there as a result, much lower in Australia. It might be because, well, New Zealand is not so well off, and many New Zealanders move to Australia, particularly to southeast Queensland, where I live, Sunshine Coast and Logan City in particular. But it might also be because the Australian government is more generous with its subsidies for IVF than the New Zealand government is, or it might be because there's a lot more banging of the drum publicity, seminars about surrogacy in Australia than there is in New Zealand. It might be a combination of all these, but it's still shocking to me to see that the rate of surrogacy births in New Zealand is half that in Australia for broadly similar countries. So I hope some university researcher looks to that and discovers the reason why, because it's just one of those things that stood out to me from that conference. Thank you for watching and listening to the Australian Family and Fertility Law Podcast. I'm Stephen Page from Page, Provan Family and Fertility Lawyers.